Hey guys, so the 2024 NRL Grand Final is over. Penrith have now won 4 straight premierships. I thought this was a good opportunity to take a look at the premiership odds for the 2025 NRL Grand Final winner. Penrith down into second place at 450 and the Storm up to $3.75. I'm going to run through each team, what their odds are, and whether I think that is overs or unders as to what it should be based on a few factors that I'm going to run through in this video. Quickly, let's take a look at, so Penrith, who won it in 2024, now made it 4 straight. Interesting, the first thing I just want to highlight is you can see there's been a slight decline in the Panthers in their number of games they're winning each season. So in 2021, they won 21 games, 20 games in 2022, then 18, then 17 last season, which was their lowest season win percentage of the 4 premierships that they have won. Now, going back all the way to 2002, during this time, we're looking at a total of 23 seasons. Of these seasons, even if you just go back to 2006 during this time, this is defensive numbers in average points conceded and where they rank in the league. The top 2 sides, one of those teams has won the premiership in all but 2 of the past 19 seasons. It was only Cronulla in 2016 and North Queensland in 2015, the only 2 teams that weren't the best or second best team in average points conceded. So that's one thing you really want to pay attention to when looking at futures bets, and especially during the season. Keep an eye on these numbers, use the Bet.Finders, and you're able to, really determine who the major chances are, and, not waste money backing aside the 5th, 6th, 10th best defensive side, even though they might be on a good run or they're attacking really, really well. Because if they might be averaging 30 points a game, but if they're also conceding, 25, 26 points a game, it's going to be very, very hard for them to win the premiership. For Penrith last season, they were the 6th ranked attacking side and number 1 ranked defensive side. They've been the number 1 side defensively the past 4 seasons. And this year was the first year they weren't in the top 4 in average points scored, ranked 6th overall. This was also the first time a team not ranked in the top 4 has won the premiership attacking wise since 2010 in the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Every other side over the past 14 years has been a top 4 attacking side as well. So you can really blend those two together. A top 2 defensive side and a top 4 attacking side is really what it's taken to win the premiership over the past decade and a half. The other thing on the ladder, the sides ranked in the top 4 have won every premiership going back to 2003. No side during that period who's finished in the top 8, but outside the top 4 has gone on to win the premiership since the Roosters back in 2002. So that's some really interesting things to pay attention to. One of the other tools I use to analyze is the Pythagorean, and looking at the number of wins teams had to the number of expected wins they were to have. The 2 teams that won more games by 2 or more than they were expected to were the Raiders and Storm, both exceeding their expected win totals by about 2.5. And then the Parramatta Eels were expected to win 9.4 and only won 7 games. These numbers are based on the team statistics, not based on the season win line. That's slightly different. That's what we look at here. This season win over under, this column right here, is what the betting companies set as the number of wins that a team was expected to have last season. You'll notice the 2 teams that were the top 2 in the market for the premiership, both of those went under their season win line. Penrith only half a game under. They had 17 wins in the end, were expected to have 17.5, and Brisbane considerably under with only the 10 wins, and their line was set at 16.5. Last season, Penrith were $3.75 favourites, and then obviously went on to win the premiership. They're $1.40 to finish top 4 and $1.06 to make the top 8. Melbourne, who lost in the grand final, they won the minor premiership. They were $12 at the start of the season to get that. And finishing top 4, they were $2.65. The Sharks were the roughest side to make the top 4, paying $3.60. They were $21 for the premiership at the start of the year. And then the Bulldogs were the roughest side to make the top 8. They were paying $3.60 to finish in the finals at the beginning of the year as $41 price for the Premiership. And then the West Tigers, you've got the wooden spoon with just the 6 wins. They were $3.50 to get the wooden spoon. Second favorites for that market, above the St. George Illawarra Dragons, who ended up winning 11 games and finishing 11th. There were some definitely dramatic, expectations, both overachieving and underachieving last season. Firstly, the Broncos, they were 6.5 under their expected wins. The Storm were 5.5 over their expected wins. The Rabbitohs, 6.5 under their expected wins, finishing 16th on the ladder. Then going through, the Sharks won 3.5 more games than they were expected to win. The Roosters, 2.5 more, same as the Cowboys. Warriors, 3.5 games less. The Eels, 5.5 games less. And then the Bulldogs won 4.5 games more. Titans, Knights, fairly similar, same as the Dolphins. Raiders won 3.5 games more than they were expected. Ended up finishing 9th on the ladder, $7.50. $4.50 for the Woodens, for the top 8, sorry. And we're only 1 game out of the top 8. And we're in the top 8 for a fair percentage during the mid part of the season. Tigers 1.5 games under their win number, and then the Dragons 3.5 over their season win number. Now, looking at the market for the upcoming season, Storm currently favorites. Penrith not all that far behind. Then we've got the Broncos and Sharks in another little group there, then all the way out to $15 for the 5th pick in the Rabbitohs. We're going to start with the bottom side and then work our way up. And I'm going to go through each team, whether I think they should be above or below their current price. So firstly, the Canberra Raiders, they're $81 this season, $20 more than they were at $61 last year. They definitely exceeded expectations, winning the 12 games last season. They haven't made any improvements to their side this season. There's a lot of players coming and going, but nothing major where you could be like, well, they've got this player coming in that's going to make a positive impact on the side. And they do lose Jordan Rapana and Elliot Whitehead. So it's difficult to see much improvement with the Raiders going into this season. They definitely did overperform last year, but I don't think they should be like complete outsiders here. Could definitely have them a touch shorter than $81, but definitely they're definitely a bottom 4 side going into 2025 at this stage. And obviously, there is still a number of factors to consider going into next year. Obviously, once the fixture comes out, once final lineups and all player movement is complete, you definitely, well, for me personally, I don't want to make any bets until all that information is released. The other thing to consider is last year, Canberra had 10 games that were decided by 6 points or less, and they won 8 of those. So when at 80% in close games, that's very, very difficult to replicate the following season. So can't see them winning 12 games or close to that. I definitely think they're going to win about the 8 games this season at absolute best, especially with those losses that they've had to their lineup. The Dragons at $67, they've moved up from 126 and wooden spoon favorites last season. Another side that definitely exceeded expectations, winning the 11 games, only expected to win 7.5. For the Dragons, they get some good ins with Valentine Holmes, the main one coming down from the North Queensland Cowboys. Also, Damien Cook comes across, adds a bit more experience to the lineup. From the South Sydney Rabbitohs, they lose Jack Burton. Probably their biggest loss is Zach Lomax, who goes across to Parramatta. So a couple of good ins, a couple of, especially Lomax, not ideal, but Valentine Holmes coming in, goes in, takes over the goal kicking as well. So it's not, a catastrophic loss for the Dragons. For them at $67, I do think that's definitely a fair price. Wouldn't have them any shorter than that current number. Definitely can't see them winning more than 11 games going into this season. The Gold Coast Titans, $61 last year. They were $51 for the Titans. They get Campbell Gillard from the Parramatta Eels, so that's a good in for them. No major losses. And last season, they had 9 close games and only won 4 of those. So there's a slight bit of improvement. The key with the Titans is being able to put together a whole season, and that's obviously a major concern with them being able to do that. So I feel like they are at that right price in that $50 to $60 range. Newcastle, they were 26 last year, out to $51 this season. For the Knights, no major ins for them going into next year. And they do lose Daniel Saiafidi, so that's a pretty major out for them for their forward pack. And I think it's going to hurt them going into next year. They also won 6 of 9 games decided by 6 or less, so did slightly overperform and were technically a little bit lucky to end up winning the 12 games. So I think they'll drop down slightly from that number next season. Redcliffe at $41. They lose Wayne Bennett. Last year they were $51, so $10 shorter going into this season. No major gains for them. They do lose Aiken, so a little bit of a loss. He follows Bennett down to the Rabbitohs. The concern with the Dolphins is how are they going to perform this year without Bennett as coach? Wolf comes in, who does have a good record coaching and has been an assistant under Bennett for the past couple of seasons, has had success over in the Super League and also coaching Tonga in the international circuit. So it's not like, the Dolphins are going to drop off dramatically. I feel like they are deserving to be a little bit shorter than last season of what we saw. They're a team that I feel like really rely on confidence and momentum. And when they can get that going, then they can perform really, really well. But when they're, not having that momentum, then, everything goes wrong for them. Definitely need to improve defensively as well to become a genuine top 8 chance. Last season, they were involved in 10 close games and only ended up winning 4 of those. So a little bit of improvement there as well. Can see them win maybe 1 or 2 extra games this season, but I doubt it's going to be more than that. New Zealand at $41. They were 23 last season. We're $1.75 to make the top 8 and only ended up winning 9 games and finished 13th. Quite a bit of player movement for the Warriors. They get James Fisher-Harris over from the Panthers, so that's a real major in for them, but do lose Adam Fanua-Blake, who goes to the Sharks. Sean Johnson retires, and then they also lose Marcel Montoya, goes over to the Bulldogs and scored 8 tries for the Warriors last season. It's hard to see a great deal of upside with them. The one thing I will say is they only won 3 of 10 games decided by 6 or less. So from that perspective, there is a slight chance of improvement for them. Last season, they only won the 9 games, so they were below their expected wins based on the numbers they put up. But just with Fanua-Blake out of the lineup, I just feel like there's a slight concern with a great deal of improvement and, bettering last year, but I feel like they're going to be somewhat around that same mark. And the 9 win total probably puts them around that $41 price. So I do feel like that $41 is probably the right price there for New Zealand. The West Tigers, $36. They're 101 last year, so they're out of the triple-digit range. And that's largely due to the way their lineup is looking this season. They get Jerome Luai from the Panthers coming into the halves. Taruva comes across from the Panthers as well. Jack Bird from the Dragons, and then Royce Hunt from the Sharks. They do lose Papali and Utoimanu. Then last season, the Tigers weren't really involved in close games. They showed, majority of their games, when you look through their schedule, they stack their wins together. They'd win a couple of games together, then lose 8, then a couple of other wins, then lose 8. They just need more consistency. And I do like the fact that they could string a couple of wins together. So if they can, find more spots of that, then they can definitely improve. At $36, that puts them about 11 wins overall in the season, 10 to 11 wins. Last year, they had 6 wins. With those wins, I can definitely see them pushing that 9 kind of win range, that's for sure. So do feel like there is a bit of improvement, probably at $36, just still a little bit short and priced a bit on hype at this stage. Parramatta at $26 and 23 last year. So fairly similar price for the Eels. They get Zach Lomax in from the Dragons and Jack Williams comes across from the Sharks. They lose Campbell Gillard and Blaze Talagi. For the Eels, their win-loss number is probably going to be around the 12.5 again. And I kind of get the feeling their season does hinge on whether Mitch Moses plays for New South Wales next year. He obviously did play last season, then picked up an injury and missed a fair bit of the season. With him in the lineup, they're a lot better side. Without him, then you can pretty much write them off. And it will obviously depend whether Cleary is playing for New South Wales next season, or Moses does need to come in. So that's probably the question mark. It's a little bit difficult to get a read on the Eels and how they're going to go. With those two outs, I can definitely understand why they're slightly longer in the Premiership market than they were last season. And also the fact that they only won 7 games overall and massively underperformed what they were expected to do. The Cowboys at $21 last year, they were 15, so slightly longer going into this season. Haven't made any improvements to their lineup, and they lose Kyle Felt and Valentine Holmes, also lose Chad Townsend, and they also lose Kyle Felt, Valentine Holmes, and Chad Townsend. So quite a few major outs. Felt and Holmes, their leading try scorers last season, and Chad Townsend had a pretty good year, all things considered, for the Cowboys. And so I find it very difficult to see any improvement on them. Their 15 win number last season, that's for sure. Teams at the $21 mark, their win-loss is set at 12.5 generally, and I'd be leaning towards them going under that number. I do think they overperform slightly, and with those outs to their lineup next year, it's definitely hard to see them creating another, top 6 or top 5. They finish 5th on the ladder performance again next year. The Manly Seagulls, they're $18. They're 23 last season, so plus 5 or $5 shorter this time around. They just cleared their season win number at 12.5 with 13 wins last year. For the Seagulls, not much has changed going into next season. Daly Cherry Evans will still lead the team around. Luke Brooks, another season in, can understand there's a bit more hope for the Seagulls, and definitely do agree with them being slightly shorter than last year. And I think just under that 20 mark is probably about the right price for them. The Roosters, who made it through to a prelim final and were eliminated by the Melbourne Storm, they're $18 for next season. They were $9.50, so not quite, but nearly double the price they were for the Premiership compared to last year. They get Chad Townsend into the lineup, coming down from North Queensland. He's in there to replace Luke Keary, who goes over to the UK. They also lose Joey Manu, Suahalihi, and Tupanua, and also Maria Hargreaves as well. So a lot of major outs for the Roosters. Last year, they won 16 games, clearing the 13.5 win line. In close games, the Roosters had 8 of them, only won 3 of those 8. But I can definitely understand with those major outs for the Roosters and not a great deal coming in to replace. I can definitely understand them being significantly longer than they were last year. One thing that was interesting, they were, $1.35 to make the top 8. Feel like they're definitely a little bit of a risk for the top 8 this season. Can't remember off the top of my head when Sam Walker and Brandon Smith are also expected to return. I'm not sure. I can't just right now remember whether they are expected to miss, how much of next season they are expected to miss. So that's another factor there for the Roosters that makes it tough for them. Canterbury Bulldogs at $17. They've moved up from $41 chances last season. Third biggest odds movement. The biggest being the Tigers, Dragons, and now the Bulldogs, but they're definitely percentage-wise made the biggest move from being a $41 chance. For the Bulldogs, they are consistently involved in close games. They're a very good defensive side, which generally lends itself towards being involved in close games. They get Tupanua and Montoya into the lineup. So some good attacking options there for them. Strengthen up their point scoring ability. Definitely on the back of their defense, definitely a top 5, top 6 chance next season if those numbers hold up. And with Serrato as the coach, can definitely see that being the case. The Rabbitohs at $15. Last season, they were $9.50, only ended up winning the 7 games. Bennett comes in as coach. There's not a great deal of improvement, though, straight off the bat with the Rabbitohs. They lose Damien Cook and Tom Burgess. Aiken comes down from the Dolphins, but outside of that, there's no major improvement. With Bennett taking over, you would expect there just to be natural improvement off of that. But I definitely can't have them as a $15 chance to win the Premiership. $15 chance, make sure $1.65 to make finals, and I do think that is too short there for the Rabbitohs as well. They were my biggest lay last season as a side at the top of the market who I thought would really struggle. That ended up being the case. They ended up finishing 16th on the ladder. Didn't have them that far down. I thought they were a 10th to 11th kind of place team, not, a bottom two on the ladder type side. I think a little bit of improvement, but definitely not deserving of being a $15 chance. I would definitely have the Bulldogs shorter, Seagulls shorter as well. Then we get to the top four in the market. Firstly, the Cronulla Sharks at $8.50. They were $21 chances last year. Ended up winning 16 games. They did have the easiest schedule last season, so you got to factor that in. It'll be interesting when the draw comes out for next season. They only had 6 close games and only won 2 of those, so potentially a little bit of improvement there. They get Adam Fanua-Blake over from the Warriors to really strengthen up their forward pack. That, offsets losing Royce Hunt, who was kind of like one of their backup props. And then Jack Williams, they lose him, who was kind of like a second row and also came off the bench and made some impact. And the other major loss for the Sharks is Finucane, who retired at the end of last season. With 16 wins, they dramatically cleared their number of 12 and a half wins. I do think they're going to be around that 15 to 16 win mark again this season. If at $8.50, their number is around the 13 and a half mark and they have an okay schedule, I can definitely see them clearing that number. Nico Hines didn't really have a great season. I think next year, Origin talks that just won't even be factored in, which should remove that pressure that after a good start of the season kind of derailed him for the rest of the year. And another year for Braden Trindle and him working together. I think Sharks have a good combination and are definitely a top 4 chance going into next season. And around like a $3 mark for them to make top 4 would be a definite bet I consider. For the Broncos, they are $8. Last season, they were $4.35, finished 12th on the ladder, only winning the 10 games. And only were involved in 5 close games. So not a great deal of upside from that perspective. Broncos haven't really done any positive recruiting either, so no major players coming in, but also no major losses. So they're bringing in a very similar side to last season. Main thing is Michael Maguire takes over from Kevin Walters as coach. Guessing like the hierarchy of the Broncos, expecting some improvement from the side for doing that. They were the first to tell you that they had lots of injuries last season, still did dramatically underperform what were expected. I think, regardless, that they did have injuries last season, I think they're still too short as an $8 chance, could definitely get them into double digits on the Premiership market personally for them next season. It's going to create a great deal of improvement. Having $8 for a side that the only time they made finals since 2020 was in the 2023 season where they made it through to the grand final and, haven't finished in the top 4 since 2017, I'd like to say off the top of my head, but it was back around those years, maybe even prior to that. And as we know, you need to finish in the top 4 to be a genuine shot at winning the Premiership. And next season, the only teams I can see finishing in the top 4 right now with Storm, Panthers, Sharks, and Bulldogs. I feel like that is your top 4. Seagulls are potentially a chance if they stay fit and healthy, but they would be definitely 5th pick of those sides. So definitely can have Broncos much longer than the $8. Penrith at $4.50. They're $3.75. They go for 5 straight premierships. Very, very difficult, but I feel like, many of us would have said that at the beginning of last season. They do have some major losses. They lose James Fisher-Harris from their forward pack and also Luai from the halves, Taruva on the wing, and then Taylor May had his contract was delisted or whatever. So quite a number of outs of key players there for the Panthers. They get Papali'i and Talagi in. That, helps their backline a little bit, and Papali'i coming in helps offset the loss of Fisher-Harris, but still not ideal for the Panthers. The one thing that I feel like is just going to keep them up there as well, though, obviously you have Cleary, but also feel like the one thing that just will constantly keep them up there in the top 4 is having Cleary in the side, because when you have a player who can control the game in the way that we have seen him do over the past, 5 years, 6 years, then it just keeps your team in games consistently. The concern, obviously, with the Panthers, especially at $4.50 for the Premiership, is whether Cleary stays healthy for next season. He obviously missed a large part of the 2024 season. However, Luai was able to cover that for the most part, and he really stepped up in Cleary's absence. They're not going to have that luxury. If Cleary gets injured next season, then Penrith are going to be a fringe top 8 side as opposed to a top 4 side. So that's the big question mark. So I do feel like there's no value in taking the $4.50, but I would leave them there because if they stay healthy, they're a sub $5 chance. But if not, then definitely not. If also Cleary does play in the Origin series next year as well, then that adds another layer of complexity for Penrith Straw. It'd be interesting to see the sides that they are playing around the Origin period, assuming that he is picked for New South Wales. Because if they have tough games during that period, then could pick up a couple of losses as well. Penrith, I feel like around the right mark, no value, but probably about right price. Then the Melbourne Storm, who made it to the Premiership, made to the grand final last season. They are favourites this year at $3.75. They are $9 last season, reigning minor Premiership. They'll probably come into about $3.50 or so for the Premiership, minor Premiership this season. Last year, they were involved in 10 close games decided by 6 or less and won 7 of those. And a lot of those were early on in the season. They were able to etch out quite a number of close wins for the Storm. No major losses and not really any major gains coming into this season. They get Utoi Kamanu from West Tigers, but outside of that, there's no real major changes. I definitely think Storm are another top 4 contender again this season. Jerome Hughes, Cam Munster will definitely keep this side well etched in the top 4. And, without losing any major players, then it definitely keeps that side together. Well-coached side. I do agree that they are top pick for the Premiership, just with the slight question marks on Penrith. And below that, there's definitely question marks around a number of sides. Big question marks on the Broncos, Rabbitohs, Roosters, and definitely Cowboys and Eels. And that pretty much rounds out the top 10 of the market. Of the other sides, like the Bulldogs, Sharks are the other main 2 chances. And I throw the Eagles in there as well. But yeah, I feel like Melbourne Storm about right price there at the $3.75. So that's how I'm looking at the 2025 market. Very, very early on. They're expecting the season to start early March. I've had 1st of March thrown around. So we're about 5 months out from that currently. And so still plenty of time between now and then. Definitely wait till the fixtures are out, till lineups are fully announced. I'll do another video going through close games and Pythagorean and break down some of that and how you can use it. The key is obviously you want to use statistics and analytics the way I've shown you guys right throughout the season to profit on the NRL. Like, I know a lot of people just like to bet on it because they're watching it and it's fun, but it's a lot funner to bet on it and profit at the same time. So that's what I hope through these videos is demonstrating what's possible. Back in 2014, I realized the importance of this. I spent my first about year and a half just betting based off like the teams I thought were good, backing them to beat the bad teams. And they're also backing like certain players I thought could score a try. And a lot of it was just guesswork, gut feeling, and from memory. And then I realized if I wanted to do this serious, I need to actually have tools at my disposal to do the research. And not only to make the research efficient, because a lot of this stuff, like you can, collect and go through and study on a week-to-week basis, but it's a lot of manual labor. And that's the reason people don't do it, is because it takes so much time and effort that it then becomes not worthwhile. So that was in 2014. I started building a lot of the things you've seen throughout the videos this year when it comes to analyzing games and breaking down the betting odds and those kind of things. And then for about 10 years, used it myself full time. Then this season made it available for everyone to use because I want more people to be profitable from betting. I hate seeing people, complaining about losing money. And obviously there's a mindset component that comes with it, but you need to have the right tools. Otherwise, you're just going to forever be in the trying to figure out your mindset phase, but not have the stuff that you actually need to be profitable as well. And it then becomes a combination of both. Like if you have the right tools, to complete your analysis and research, and like the Bet.Finders make it so easy. And then you have the mindset and the management and bankroll management approach to set yourself up to be profitable, then you can definitely do it. So hopefully this video was helpful and gave you some insight into the next season starting in March in 2025. The other thing that I wanted to mention, we're only a couple of days away from the start of the NBA season. And what you're seeing with the NRL videos when we're betting on games, totals, handicaps, all of that, and then also try scorers, all those same principles apply to betting on the NBA. So with the NBA, we're using player matchups, so betting on the points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers, and breaking down, finding good matchups for certain players. And then also betting on sides by looking at their offensive and defensive numbers and determining where the mistakes are in the market. So been betting on the NBA full-time since 2014 as well. That was when I really started taking sports seriously. And this year will be no different. I implemented a new strategy that I hadn't actually done before until about halfway through last NBA season that worked really, really well. So I'm super excited to get that back and running when the season gets underway on Wednesday. Same principle with the NBA. I have the Bet.Finders available for you guys to use so you can study the games and find really, really good bets. If you also want to see what I'm betting every single day, you can get that in the NBA season pass. The NBA season pass is normally $799. I made it available here up until the beginning of the season. Right now, if you use the code Boston, that'll reduce that $799 down to $399 for the first 10 people. So you just type in the code there, Boston, and then it'll reduce it down to $399. That's for the first 10 people. Then use the code OKC for the following 20. The reason why I'm doing this is I want to have just a small group of people that I take right through the NBA season from start on Wednesday all the way through to the end of the NBA finals. It's about a 7.5-month season. So this $399 that it comes down to breaks down to just over $2 a day. And that gets you all the NBA Bet.Finder tools and also all my bets every single day. So if you're going to be betting on the NBA, use this to your advantage so that you make this season profitable. I know a lot of people are just going to be doing like crazy multis and having stacks of things going every single day, but you can use the Bet.Finders to determine like the really good betting situations and then just hit those, and then that's what'll be allowing you to be profitable on a weekly basis right throughout the season. So definitely check that out. That'll be available until the tip-off of the first game on Wednesday. And as soon as you sign up, you get access to everything. So I'll put the link to the NBA Bet.Finders in the description. If you have any questions about it or whatever, put them in the comments underneath this video. That being said, I really appreciate you guys watching and following along on this channel. And I'm really excited to keep putting out more NRL videos right throughout and then leading up to the kickoff of next season. Thanks, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.